Welcome. Thank you for being here. My name is Dino Boris Dougoud. I'm going by Boris, preferably. And I'm actually employed as a consulting systems engineer for Fortinet, and I'm tackling everything which has to do with enabling and securing OT and ICS installation bases for our customers, which are mainly going through and spanning EMEA. So that's it for my side. I just wanted you, possibly if you want, to applaud SCRT for the organization of Insomnihack, because I am very happy to be here. I hope that you are also very happy to be here. It's been a long time since I've actually talked in front of people, so I might have some kernel panic at some point, but just try to say sunshine or something like that, and I might come back. Okay. That was that. Now that I spoke a little bit about SCRT, I just wanted to take a few outcomes that you'll find on the SCRT blog, which is a very nice read, and into the output that I've taken today. There's a few of them specifically talking about what their audit department are usually seeing in the wild, and actually the lack of things they are seeing in the wild. And here, it was actually a survey which has been conducted internally at SCRT amongst all the business unit within SCRT, and the outcome of that survey came out with what will be the best method to do in order to protect any given customer at any given point of time. And the first outcome that came out was actually network isolation. So basically we see that network isolation is something that is really tremendously in need, and not only network isolation by the means of enabling VLANs, enabling segmentation points, etc., but network segmentation enabling firewalling filtering in between these segmentation points. And that slide is to enforce that messaging again, because the narrative isn't very new, and you will find others input into the same blogs concerning the same type of information, and the fact that there is rarely any communication firewalling in between or within the given same subnet. Now, let's dive into what Fortinet can do for OT customers. So basically, the first thing we have at Fortinet is a OT specialty. So we try to really enable all the workforce we can and all the research and development we can onto securing ICS and OT. We try to comply as much as possible with our devices with the industry standard regulation and compliance requirement. That's a big job, so to speak. We also try to identify as much as possible as OT-based network communication on the wire, meaning that our devices might have the possibility to identify on the wire exactly which type of ICS communication is going on, and you will have the possibility to actually police this type of ICS OT communication. Another very important topic here is the intrusion and detection and prevention possibility of it by FortiOS. We have more than 250 threat researchers which are working around the clock in 3 different data centers in order to provide and update our devices with threat intelligence concerning not only, but of course, ICS and OT. And we also provide one of the leading application control possibilities, offering ICS communication control on the wire. Network segmentation, I will talk about that during the speech, so I won't extend too much here, but we have the possibility to, of course, provide you with the enablement of segmentation points, and going further than that, provide micro-segmentation through the enablement of Forti switches. The Fabric-Ready partner is our ecosystem, which I'll have a couple of slides talking about that. OT solution architecture. So basically, mainly what happens is that within any given OT premises, we usually find the IT department on top, at which at some point within the network, you will see the operational technology boundary. And in here is how we will actually enable and protecting communication within the OT authentication boundary. First, We will start with actually enabling zones and conduits. We will do that with FortiOS, for example, and try to secure remote connectivity in the IT department. So 2 devices here enabled, FortiOS of course, and switching layer 2 devices with our FortiSwitch possibilities. Deep OT visibility, we will enable that with our industrial services which are enabled on FortiOS. So that deep OT visibility will provide you with the possibility to control ICS and OT communication on the wire, and that will be enabled into the control network toward the field network down within the OT installment. Role-based access control, we will enable that with 2 different types of solutions. So as you can see here, we have Fortinet in order to enable network access control, if that is something that is of interest for any given customers. We also have one very interesting platform, I'll talk a little bit about it, FortiAuthenticator, in order to enforce 2-form factor authentication throughout the OT installment. Of course, we try to secure critical endpoint with one solution which is called FortiEDR. So you have the possibility to enable a kernel-based EDR solution onto the endpoint which are comprised within the OT installment. And finally, or not yet finally, we have the centralized SIS security management plus SOC NOC operation controls here. So here we can enable solutions like FortiCM, for example, of course, FortiManager in order to manage the fleet of devices in the field, and a FortiAnalyzer in order to gather logs from your Fortinet security fabric ecosystem. Finally, yes, the possibility to install and deploy advanced threat protection systems with here 2 devices, 2 appliances possibility, FortiDeceptor, which I will talk about in detail a little bit throughout the presentation, and our FortiSandbox solution, which will enable on-prem sandboxing if so wanted. This slide is actually representing an IEC 62443 compliant solution architecture. Of course, you will see a lot of Fortinet-enabled possibilities here. I think that what that slide really summarizes, and the idea about this slide, is that what at Fortinet we try to enable and push toward our customer in order to protect their architecture is this vertical part here, in which we will put our FortiOS devices at the core of the network and control the layer 2 devices, namely FortiSwitches, and hence provide segmentation possibilities directly within the FortiOS installment. Now, of course, at the level 3, level 3.5, you see a lot of possible Fortinet ecosystem appliances. At which, of course, it's at customer discretion in order to see if they want such type of solutions. It's not, of course, an obligation, but it's something that Fortinet can provide and can put and enable into a given ICS installation. Here, for example, CM solutions, sandboxing, management, analyzer, authenticator, and the FortiProxy, for example, which will enable a single outbound pass through our FortiProxy possibility. Fortinet solution offering for ICS and OT. We have a few rugged devices. So these are devices which are especially made for harsh environment, where we will have the possibility to deploy, for example, all the FortiOS based devices you are seeing here on that slide. Plus, we have 2 different rugged switch and 2 different access points in order to enable such type of installment into harsh environment. Keep in mind that these rugged platforms are one thing, but mainly a lot of our OT customers are also able to host completely standard type of appliances within their data centers. Meaning by that if you have a complete normalized type of data center plus air conditioning, etc., you can run and host any type of Fortinet appliances. I will now try to present to you a global customer use case that is a worldwide industry actor. They actually deployed 6 100 plus FortiGate throughout the year 2020 and 2021. They had 3 different appliances of choice, so a small, medium, and large appliance. They had thousands of worldwide locations in which they wanted to enable cybersecurity through the leverage of Fortinet installment. They went for a fully converged IT and OT FortiGate deployment. I will detail exactly that deployment scheme in the upcoming slide. Of course, obviously, they wanted to have centrally managed zero-touch provisioning deployments possibility, meaning by that the deployment wanted to be controlled by the HQ. And they were roughly adding 2 plus FortiGate daily and still are adding 2 plus FortiGate daily on a daily basis today. The project drivers, OT and IT convergence. So this was the top priority in order to converge these 2 worlds and have a security view onto these 2 worlds in the parts. Security framework unification. They wanted to unify all their security tools and artillery available in order to secure their environment. They did that with Fortinet installment. Plus, they wanted, of course, a single point of central management. So that is the view of the actual architecture they've chosen in order to deploy their FortiGate appliances. What you can see here is comprised of a single or clustered FortiOS appliance. The idea here is to divide the FortiOS appliance, so to speak, into different functional domains. By functional domain, we see here 3 different backend, should I speak, functional domains. So we have the OT domain, of course, the IT domain, and the management domain. We have a fronting to the WAN domain, which is here called WAN domain, and that domain is the only one which will have WAN connectivity. So with WAN connectivity, we can extend that through MPLS network, for example, mount IPsec tunneling toward the HQ or anything of that vein, even go to further SASE processing if so wanted by the customer. Now that that WAN functionality has been explained, the interesting idea here is to see that within the OT domain, for example, we have the possibility to further deploy layer 2 device and control this layer 2 device at the OT domain. Meaning by that anything that will be behind that OT domain has all the zone and conduits and policy enforcement, plus all the FortiOS available artillery available directly from the OT virtual domain. Meaning by that all the communication that happens within the OT domain is protected by that particular domain. Anything that might need to reach the outbound world would have been subject to the policies which are further in the WAN VDOM, for example, or any other VDOM part of the configuration. Sorry, that kernel panic moment. Okay, further on to the IT domain, for example, as we can see here, we also have the possibility to host on-prem appliances. Here in that illustration, we see a FortiSandbox, for example, appliance which is hosted behind the IT domain. Keep in mind that FortiSandbox appliance can be actually targeted by any given device part of that subsystem. And we can, of course, make submission to this sandboxing subsystem wherever the submission might come from that configuration. Another last thing I wanted to mention here, I will talk about that a little bit further on within the presentation. The access VLAN possibility you see on that slide here, and within the 3 different zones enabled into the OT domain. So that access VLAN possibility is the Fortinet feature set, which will enable you to actually analyze lateral movement that might occur within one given subnet. So I'll talk a little bit about it later on. So, of course, they wanted to have central management for all these FortiOS devices in the field. The view you are seeing here is their view from FortiManager, which is actually hosted on a cloud, public cloud vendor, behind IPsec tunnels, of course. And just the illustration here is to show you that it's a real possibility to have plenty of device in the field reporting to the same FortiManager and orchestrate all these policies at the, of course, FortiManager layer. Now, in terms of policy orchestration and what these devices are actually eating up whenever they show up on the network, this is one view of what has been decided by that customer in order to push all these policies to any given FortiGate that arise on the network. So they talk with their teams, they talk with their plant managers, and they came up with a quorum of policy, which is here detailed by the global OT VDOM policy, for example. And that quorum of policy cover pretty much roughly 90% of their policy needs in order to secure any given plants of their environment. Of course, there will be some cases where one very special machinery into a given plant might talk a different ICS and OT language, messaging protocols that will need pinpointing at that particular plant. But nevertheless, the idea here was to unify as much as possible all the communication and have the same subsets of policies pushed toward any given device that is currently under management. Concerning the zero-touch deployment, the idea was to actually fill in some site configuration from the plant manager. We have to take into account here that obviously within ICS, when we say plant manager, that individual, his mission is to run his plant 24/7, meaning by that any disruption of the plant is actually money that is not coming in for that particular plant manager. And you know how this goes. They really are pretty much, so to speak, sometimes a little bit reluctant to see changes coming in and to see new things being changed within their networks. Nevertheless, the idea was to fill in the site-specific configuration, gather this information, and once we have that filled in, connect the FortiGate to the FortiManager staging VLAN. Once we are there, the local IT staff will actually stage the FortiGate by booting the device with a generic USB key, which will connect to the FortiManager IP address and under complete HQ control. Once we have that, the ZTP tool will actually provision the FortiGate toward the FortiManager, and we will retrieve all the given configuration for that specific FortiGate device. So pretty much not much to do for the local IT staff. They could stage these FortiGates themselves quite easily. Once that has been done, actually, it was just the operation of pretty much switching the cables toward the production environment and booting up the FortiGate into its final configuration and final cabling mode. I'll now present and detail a few of the OT customer-praised features, so to speak, about what is actually of interest for ICS and OT individuals within the field, what they actually like about what we can propose to them. I talked about it. Obviously, of course, the enablement of layer 2 device from the core of your cybersecurity solution. Here, FortiSwitches enabled and controlled, managed by the FortiOS installment. So that is something that is quite praised within ICS and OT, because it means that they will have the possibility to enable any single segmentation points directly from within the FortiOS installment itself. So Of course, you have all the port level and visibility within FortiOS. You have multi-tenancy available. So if you want to ship a VLAN toward a different functional domain, we call them internally virtual domain. So if you want to ship a VLAN over a different virtual domain and control the segmentation point from different functional domains, you have this type of possibilities. We support plenty of tiered architecture available with FortiSwitches. So here I just listed one, which is called multi-tier switching topologies through FortiGate high availability. Plenty of these possible deployment schemes are available to you, and you will have the possibility to control all your layer 2 devices in names of FortiSwitch. Of course, it helps to implement best practices, namely IEC 62443, NIST, defense in depth, etc., because we enable segmentation from the core of the chosen cybersecurity solution. Again, segmentation and microsegmentation. That microsegmentation feature is actually this one. We call it Access VLAN. What is implied here is that onto a given and configured VLAN, you will have the possibility to toggle a toggle option within FortiOS in order to enable intra-VLAN traffic, which will climb up back to the FortiGate. So pretty much that means that every single lateral movement that might arise within that given subnet will be supposedly under scrutiny of the FortiOS installment. What we do here, generally speaking, into ICS and OT is that we enable passive probing onto these given subnets. So we will analyze all the traffic. Traffic will pass through AV, IPS, application control, and we will actually gather all the information without disrupting traffic. So at least we have complete knowledge and complete visibility of what is going on and what is laterally moving within one given subnet. So our customer like that feature and pretty much implement it in the wild. Another interesting feature which is embedded within FortiOS, so you don't have to pay for that. It's something that comes embedded within. It's a small NAC solution. It has nothing to compare with fully dedicated, huge NAC solution, the one we know of. We also have one, our FortiNAC solution. Nevertheless, the idea here is to propose a small NAC possibility of any given FortiOS that has this FortiSwitch layer 2 device under management. By that, the use case I've seen a lot within ICS and OT was for the ICS operators to actually NAC their unused switch ports, meaning by that they will have deployment with, for example, a 48 port switch device in which they use up to 80%, the 20% which remains, they will actually NAC these ports in order to either move and seat anybody that might connect to these ports into a dedicated VLAN or request user authentication if that's wanted. FortiGuard Industrial Security Services. This is now a license that you'll have to enable onto your FortiOS device if you want to control any ICS and OT communication on the wire. So here, what we will do is that we will enable you with all the intelligence we know about ICS and OT onto your FortiOS system, and you'll have the possibility to leverage two different UTMs and modules, so to speak. So application control, in which you will have the possibility to control exactly on the wire what's going on at the signature level. I'll come to that in a few slides. And virtual shielding, which will provide you with the ability to virtually patch known vulnerable devices within the ICS deployment. One very interesting thing onto FortiOS is that you have the discretion to configure these security profiles up to your will, meaning that you can have plenty of these security profiles and you can mix and match at the policy level what security profile you want on that particular policy. So if you want to craft, for example, read, write operation from one end of the network toward a different end of the network, you have the possibility to do so. If you want to only allow read access onto any given ICS protocol, you might also have the possibility to do so. Quite handy and a very versatile possibility from FortiOS. So now on to these industrial security services provided by FortiGuard onto our FortiOS subsystems. We provide currently 1,830 application control selectors. So these are the type of selectors. Here into my example, I've chosen to show you the 3Connect 3-station protocol that we can control at the firewall level. And the idea here is that every single line you can see here is something that you can put in your application control security profile. And that is quite impressive because you will have the possibility to really mix and match with any messaging from the ICS protocol that you will want, crossing your segmentation points. So quite handy, and as I said, a lot of granularity offered by our FortiGuard labs individuals. Same applies to and comes with that particular license bundle. Same applies to the IPS side of the ICS and OT offering. So we have, of course, virtual patching signatures that will patch known vulnerable device. Up to today, we have 540 OT and ICS dedicated IPS selector, virtual shielding, known vulnerable assets. And this is counting. We work on providing new IPS signatures on a daily basis. So if we are being aware of anything that might be a known vulnerability, or even sometimes we are pinged from manufacturers in order to protect their known vulnerability that they dissolve within closed ground, so to speak, within FortiGuard and different threat intelligence services, we will of course provide that to our customer base. Now, another interesting topic within ICS, it's called remote access. So there's plenty of different possibility to skin a cat within remote access. At Fortinet, we provide different possibility to host remote access. So whether you'll want to go with SSL VPN, IPsec tunneling, FAT client with FortiClient, etc. There's plenty of different ways to handle that. One interesting way as well is our web portal, in which this is a complete clientless solution that will provide remote access to any given customers. The idea here is that within the security fabric, you see here the FortiOS on the edge, an OT protecting OT boundary based FortiOS as well. We have the possibility to host these remote access possibilities without enforcing any client-based requirement onto the given third-party user. So basically what we will need here is just a web browser, a set of credentials, and a two-form factor token, which is provided here by our FortiToken platform. And we will be able to interface what the security administrator has configured for us in order to access remote subsystems. Again, as well, something very versatile. You have very different possibility to interface here. The example illustrates, for example, a user repository which is commonly based onto Windows domain controllers. So addressing these Windows domain controllers to LDAP, LDAP-S. Anyways, whatever your user repository might be, our FortiAuthenticator will have most certainly the ability to address your user repository and add that second factor layer that is sought after within the ICS and OT. Another important factor is that obviously, of course, all these inbounding communication toward the edge FortiOS is completely under scrutiny. So we have the possibility to enable IPS, application control, threat lists, for example, if you want to deny any inbound communication from known threats. And furthermore, we still have the possibility as well onto FortiOS to, for example, ship SSL deciphered traffic. So that is a quite handy feature as well, because you have the possibility onto your policy to enable, for example, deciphered traffic being shipped toward a CM platform of your choice or a third-party IDPS solution of your choice as well. So quite a handy feature here as well. Onto the advanced threat protection and cyber deception, let me dissect a little bit what FortiDeceptor is. FortiDeceptor is a platform that we came with a few years ago. It's our honeypot solution, so to speak. We have plenty of decoys available within FortiDeceptor. I'll list them here. So obviously, mainly here, the Scala and ICS decoys, we have Rockwell, Ethernet IP, CMSS7, BACnet, EPMI modules, Modbus simulations, etc. All these decoys are deployable to your convenience. So it's like deploying a virtual machine, which will be a decoy deployed within your network. So you can address whatever part of the network your FortiDeceptor appliance might be installed in. We also provide a few IoT decoys. For the time being, we have simulated IP cameras, Cisco routers, printers, etc. The complete artillery of Windows operating systems. So from 7 to 2019 lately. Linux subsystem that you can deploy as well as decoys, and obviously, of course, all the services, SMB, SQL, RDP, and all the applications that are commonly deployed onto decoys. We also help our customer with the honey token, in the fact that you will have the possibility to inter-exchange with live subsystems within your network, within the decoys and live system, meaning that communication will happen in between real systems and the decoy, making the decoy more interesting for anybody that will want to engage communication with the decoys. And another funny one that I like here is the FortiOS SSL VPN decoy. So this one is quite interesting, because you will have the possibility to enable false SSL VPN onto your outbound or edge standpoint, and track and see who is wanting to engage communication with your false or lured SSL VPN decoy. So an interesting one. Of course, obviously, within FortiDeceptor, we will stack the FortiGuard intelligence within the decoys, meaning by that antivirus and IPS engine will be embedded within the decoy. So anyone which might drop a payload onto one of these decoy, we will launch the artillery of our FortiGuard intelligence in order to possibly match already something onto that disposal on any decoy. And you will be, of course, informed in real time onto the attacking and attacker activity, and we provide correlated campaigns. Here, just a view of what the appliance will give you. So I think it's quite an interesting small view of that. We see here that the communication engaged with the decoy will give you the possibility to download a PCAP. So you'll have all the PCAP traffic analysis onto that exchange toward any given possible opponent and the decoy. So that is one possibility. And obviously, as you can see here, the IPS attack that matched one of our IPS filter will also be reported within the given incident reports. Our sandboxing subsystem, I talked about it within a few slides, and how you can enable that. So the idea of sandboxing is to take submissions and detonate these submissions through a few inbounding filters, and the Forti sandbox ecosystem is actually interoperable within the security fabric from a standpoint of, for example, any FortiGate can ship submission to the Forti sandbox subsystem, FortiMail, FortiWeb, FortiClient. We have integration with FortiCM in order to ship syslogs to our CM device, and of course, obviously, we can log all the activity of the Forti sandbox ecosystem toward our Forti Analyzer subsystem. Here is a view of how that subsystem is actually functioning and what is actually going on within the complete subsystem. I'll speed up a little bit, but interestingly, you have the possibility to tap traffic. So wherever your sandbox might be within your installment, you have the possibility to engage with span port and send all the traffic to the sandboxing subsystem if so you want. The fabric devices, as you can see with the fleece of FortiGate devices, will integrate at the device input standpoint. Another interesting one is the network share. I'll detail that a little bit further on. The adapters here are for ICAP submissions, for example. We also will find here BCC connectivity possibility from any mail system if you want to send every single email through BCC, and the MTA agent possible onto the Forti Sandbox subsystem as well. The on-demand and URL detection, this is something that an administrator will do manually on the system, so it's also available here. The idea is here on the Forti Sandbox component is to, as quickly as possible, get rid of the submission, so to speak. So as quickly as we can match that the submission is either something which is malicious or something which is clean, we will do that with the most accurate way, and as said, going through the filter in order to release the queue of potential jobs coming into the Forti Sandbox system. One of the last stage you can see here, the VM AI scan. This is where we will detonate the submission within a given virtual machine and let that submission do exactly, for example, a WinPE file. Let that WinPE file do exactly what it wants to do onto that circumvented environment with internet access, and record every single thing that that particular submission will do. And then once we have all this information, match a verdict onto that submission. The other interesting information, and last one I will talk to you about here, is the update of the malware DB that you can see here. So whenever our Forti Sandbox might find something malicious at one end of the network, we will update the malware DB of your fleets of FortiGate. So if something is actually detected at one end of the network, that information is spread apart onto all and every single FortiOS platform. Another important factor for ICS and OT interested customers, we have what is called this OT companion VM, which will be something that will detonate along the virtual machines into the VM scans, meaning by that if there is any interaction at the OT level using, for example, layer 2 type of communications or any given Modbus IC 104 type of communication, we will record that through the companion VM and will give you all these informations within the verdict. One use case which will summarize all the possibility we have with using remote access plus Forti Sandboxing, for example. Here the idea is that our third-party remote user, remote engineer, will have the possibility to engage an RDP session to the engineering workstation, which you see here. Will have the possibility to engage an SSH session toward an IAD within the OT authentication boundary. Now that this has been said, that individual won't have the possibility to upload anything onto that particular RDP session, neither will he have the possibility to do so onto the SSH session. So how will he, for example, if we take, for example, a third-party engineer, a remote engineer that needs to do something within the OT installment, he needs to update the firmware to dispose some codes within that installment in order to conduct its operation. But we want to make sure that this code passes every single potential checkpoints we have available. So the idea here is that the remote user will face a third-party upload repository. This is exactly what I referred to with the network share onto the sandboxing subsystem. So this is a network share. The sandbox will actually continuously scan that third-party upload repository, and upon verdicting, will dispatch the files which are known goods into its final destination. So here, our engineering workstation. And if any of these files match as being malicious, of course, we will quarantine these contents, and we will inform the user through a simple text file within the final repository there that its uploaded file hasn't made it through the final repository because it contained some malicious contents, etc., and so on. So a use case that it's often used in the wild in order to control inbound file for ICS and OT customers. I think I have a lack of time, but I have plenty of not plenty, but a few other slides. I'll actually skip that one. FortiManager we've seen. Maybe this one is interesting. Some of our customers, they like to still keep what they called the air gap. So the air gap is a complete lack of connectivity from their ICS installment, so they won't have external facing connectivity from the OT layers, and we have a solution for that at Fortinet, which is through our management platform, in order to provide local FortiGuard distribution server, meaning by that you will have all the updates, so you can either let that FortiManager retrieve these updates in a very circumstanted manner, or you can alternatively conduct manual updates on your FortiManager platform, which will push all these updates toward deployment where you don't have outbound reachability. Another interesting factor is that not only will we push that for FortiOS, but we support, of course, the FortiOS, FortiProxy, for example, all the updates going to our FortiSandbox subsystem, all the updates going to FortiClient subsystem are also supported by FortiManager. So if your customer will really want not to have outbound connectivity, it's something which is possible with that particular deployment. FortiAnalyzer, I think I'll skip that. And yeah, let's go to the FortiCM. There's a few use cases that we've seen into some of the deployments with FortiCM. The interesting idea here is that for customers that might already be Fortinet customers, for most of them, they already have the FortiAnalyzer platform. What we do in such cases is that we have the possibility to literally integrate FortiCM in their installment within minutes, because we will use a log forward from the FAS platform directly within the CM. So this is one tunnel from FortiAnalyzer to FortiCM, and where we will ship already all the logs from the Fortinet Security Fabric and have that into our CM platform. Of course, we offer the Fortinet Cybersecurity Fabric view that you can see here, that's embedded within FortiCM, and you have plenty of different CM possibilities. Namely, a use case I had was for one customer that really wanted to send a very dedicated type of SNMP traps toward an SNMP-enabled subsystem that he couldn't actually do so from the device originally. We have the possibility, for example, within FortiCM to leverage such use cases, conduct some incident, and from this incident, in the occurrence of such incidents, send SNMP traps in, for example. Last slide on that. Interesting use cases. You see here, I don't know if you can read that, but we see permitted traffic inbounding, which has matched the FortiGuard malicious threat list. So this is embedded within FortiCM, and directly after we see the host, which is quarantined by our NAC feature. So this is a host quarantine enabled at the FortiOS layer. The interesting part here is that all this is correlated, and you have all this information into a blink of an eye. So the CM platform is really something that will help you at getting a grasp onto whatever is actually going on within your networks. Of course, we can integrate threat feeds. So as you can see here, I named a few: Alien Vault, OTX, threat streams, threat connects. There's plenty of integration you can do. So if some of these threat streams are interesting for you and you want to inject these information within your CM installment, it's perfectly doable. And that's it. I think I'll just detail a little bit what type of ecosystem we currently have and on what we are working. So basically, when we will talk about fabric connectors, these connectors are connectors that are actually made by Fortinet in order to interface a different type of technology. You have some technology vendors here, Aruba, Cisco, ServiceNow, for example. So these are the technology connectors we at Fortinet are developing. We also talk a lot about the Fabric API integrations. This is where the third-party vendor, for example, Arista, Nozomi, Siemens, Dragos, etc., are developing their integration with our product through the leverage of our Fabric APIs. So that is quite common. We have for some of them state-of-the-art integrations, which are really interesting use cases for the given customers that want to integrate such type of third-party possibility with different subsystems. Fabric DevOps, this is a community-driven DevOps possibility offered by Fortinet. We have the Fortinet developer network platform on which DevOps can exchange their ideas and different scripts, etc. Plus all the security provisioning and configuration and orchestration possible at that layer. And finally, the extended ecosystem. This is mainly where we will exchange threats. So as you can see, the Cyber Threat Alliance, the OT Cybersecurity Alliance, and all such kind of threat exchange possibilities. The operational technology ecosystem, I won't go into much detail in here. There's plenty of integration. So these type of integration are exactly the one which falls into the API integration that we saw earlier. There's plenty of different actors that you are seeing here. I'll just take one example, the Siemens RuggedCom that you can see up there, which was an interesting use case because they came up on the market with a solution which is called RX 1500. And that solution is an industrial switching solution in which they wanted to embed some compute power and by that host some cybersecurity possibilities within that compute power. And they actually chose FortiOS in order to embed that into their devices that they will provide to their customer. And in the core of that solution, for example, the FortiOS is actually running. Onto the solution vendors integration. Of course, we have plenty of solutions. We are working a lot with Schneider, ABB, Siemens, the Yokogawa, GE, of course, in order to provide and enable cybersecurity for their deployments. And mainly that's what I wanted to share with you on that particular slide. And with that, I'm just leaving the last slide of my presentation with the Fortinet Security Fabric vision that we had a couple of years ago. I think we started that in 2015. And the idea, of course, is that every single potential product within the Fortinet security portfolio actually interact amongst one another, and the central piece of that being our FortiGuard threat intelligence. So thank you very much for your attention today. Sorry for my few kernel panics. If there's any question in the audience, please just raise a hand. I'm up for any question. Don't be afraid. And thank you very much.